Hello, and a big welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for coming here today to our Global Leadership Masterclass. The world really needs global leaders. We're here to find out why, and we're also here to find out how we can become the global leaders of today and tomorrow. And we have a fantastic guest here today, Mr. Joaquin Angles, who's an expert on change management, leadership, and strategy, and has been with us doing many webinars on this subject. And we're really pleased to get through shared leadership and now onto global leadership. So welcome, Joaquin, welcome. And how are you today?
Hey, thanks, Joe. Very good. Thank you.
Well, Joaquin, I'm just going to set the scene a bit and outline a few house rules before we continue. What we did is we asked Joaquin a section of questions that were pertinent to global leadership, and Joaquin returned his answers to us, and what we're going to do is discuss those answers openly today. Now, this is an open Q&A session. What that means is you'll see a little bar there where you'll get to type in any question that you're thinking of, that you're stimulated about when you're listening to Joaquin discuss global leadership. So don't be shy. You'll get out of the webinar what you put into it. So do put your questions in there as well. If you're a student watching this, then you will have the opportunity to cite and reference this webinar. But please remember to do that properly and name drop Joaquin and cite and reference with quotation marks, etc., etc. My name is Joseph O'Brien. I'll be the moderator today, and we'll be asking those questions to Joaquin. In about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, we'll get to that Q&A session, and that'll be an open session as well. So let's begin with our first question of the day, Joaquin. The ultimate question. Why does the world, Joaquin, why does the world need global leaders? Let's set the scene.
Well, it's not one quick answer that I can give you. I can give you many factors, but today we live in a very complex, fast-changing world. The realities and dynamics of globalization has connected our communities, countries, borders together, and this increased emphasis on emerging markets brings us many challenges in developing the type of leaders that are required today to run global organizations. Now, I feel whether you're running a small company or a large international company, one needs to have a very good understanding of what is happening or impacting the world, such as different geopolitical issues, economic factors, different crises, even threats from increased terrorism or violence can have a direct effect to many organizational decisions today. So we've got to be very well versed and understanding of what is happening in the world. So today we need global leaders who are building partnerships, can align themselves with different supply chains involving people with different, very diverse cultures and backgrounds and different communication styles. So to summarize, I guess the right answer will be we need global leaders today who can understand what is happening in our world and take effective measures to adapt the right strategies to confront these challenges. And that's, in short, that's basically what I feel that's important today to bring about these global leadership perspective.
Exactly, and you brought together some very nice ideas here with the global mindset, the global skill sets, and the global experience. That's also featuring in the handout for today's webinar, where the article is available for all you guys to download and read after the webinar if you want to explore some of the points today. So we looked at, why the world needs global leaders. It's almost whacking that we don't have a choice. The world has become one in certain ways. What is the difference then, and can we identify differences between domestic and global leaders?
Yes, there are a lot of similarities because you still have different leadership abilities and competencies that one has to develop. But domestic leaders focus a lot of their strategies and vision within the content of their own industry and domestic organizations. While we look at global leaders, are individuals who affect significant positive change in organizations by building communities through the development of trust and focusing on multiple cross-boundary stakeholders, multiple sources of external cross-boundary authority, and multiple cultures and cultural complexity. These global leaders are capable of understanding cultural differences and behave in ways that they can understand different experiences of culture. An effective global leader must also be culturally aware and adaptable. So you got to be able to understand what is residing within your own organization, what type of cultures do you have, and be able to adapt the right environment that fits different cultures. This means that we need to be very well grounded in how different cultures operate and accomplish different organizational objectives. So global leaders also must cope with the increased level of complexity. So that's more, and which is more complex today than what we find in domestic leaders, which just deal with their own realm of their organization. But even domestic leaders today have to deal with culture. They have to deal with different people that are very diverse. And today they have to make those type of changes. That they have to be able to bring about an environment that is fitting for everyone in the organization.
I mean, it appears, certainly from our learnings, that the construct of a perfect, global leader can't exist. You can't be completely culturally sensitive to every culture, and you can't know everything. But you can strive to, in terms of this slide here, where do you feel that many global leaders actually then fall short?
Well, a lot of them fall short, and the major one, I think, is because they have very little experience on the ground, very little understanding and deficiency in global knowledge and understanding what is really happening in the world that can affect them. What geopolitical context today is affecting different issues within their own organization. What cross-cultural collaborations are you implementing that perhaps are not being effective today? You also have to understand that as a leader, you have to lead not with an ego and not with fear or intimidation, but with some level of understanding that other people in the organization have knowledge and experience to also be able to help you become an effective leader. So you have to share. And I talked about this before in other webinars. The importance of shared leadership really comes to mind because, in organizations today, global leaders need to depend on other people to really help them lead their organization. Also, we must understand that some of them have a misunderstanding of global citizenship stewardship, which means they fail to see all corporations and individuals as global citizens, and do not understand the cultural orientation. I feel sometimes when you have these types of leaders, they really do not really grasp the importance of what different cultures can bring to your organization, and what you can learn from different backgrounds and different rituals and different understandings that are important today. And finally, having weak global skill sets. I mean, some global leaders perhaps may not be effective communicating across borders, and may not be able to manage crisis effectively. So that's one of the things that when you look at leaders, global leaders that have been effective today, and one of the things that they do have is that they are able to negotiate, they're able to communicate well, and they're able to understand different languages and work with that environment that helps them become very effective. But these are some of the key areas that I think that why some global leaders fall short and that may not be as effective today.
I mean, I think that's very interesting what you touched upon there. When I was learning global leadership, they drew comparisons between expats and global leaders and said that people who've traveled very well and have had to assimilate in different countries, so say people who come from the West or the East and have had to go over to the other side and work in different cultures, say American businessmen working in Japanese business cultures, which would be very different, that they have an advantage, that being an expat and having exposure to cultures and exposure to traveling is actually a good blueprint for being a global leader. Do you believe that that's the case?
Oh, definitely. I think, and if you look at some of the models that companies like Walmart that are actually travel and did business in China, how they went about building that level of communication with a country that was totally different, that had different political understanding, different cultures, but they were able to adapt this model that resided in the United States to complement very, very well in the Chinese environment. And the fact that they were able to recognize and understand our culture was really helped them become so successful. And today they are considered a very excellent global organization.
And that's an interesting point in terms of systems, because different countries, different cultures might have different systems of management. And one of our questions that we have here for you, Joaquin, is what really is a systems approach to global leadership, and can we get lost in the amount of different types of systems there are?
Right. Well, what I believe when you look at a system approach, and there are a lot of different elements, factors that you can put in together to think about how we can come up with a framework that has a system approach to global leadership. I believe any kind of model should look at 4 different sets of factors, and the most important one of the most important one is the internal function of the individual leader. That individual leader has to have some very good understanding and knowledge and experience with the right level of education and competency skills, so that person can really can be able to confront challenges and recognize what is happening in the environment. There's also going to be a very good level of interaction between the leader and the organization, that the right leadership style has to fit. There are a lot of leaders today that are not able to adapt the proper leadership style that lends itself to being an effective global leader today. You have to recognize that the ability to empower individuals to help you make decisions. One person is not going to be the almighty power in a global leadership environment. Also, in this type of framework or this type of a system approach, we need to recognize the internal functions of the organization and the interaction between the organization and its environment. We have to, and the leaders have to cultivate the type of environment that really understands what's happening externally within the organization. And then finally, the global's leader ability to interact and function effectively with the rest of the world. I mean, if you are conducting business in several different countries, you have to be able to effectively communicate well and interact well with your suppliers or people that you're doing business with, so you can be very, very effective out there. I mean, you have to recognize other people, and you're basically conducting business in other countries. You have to allow for other people to also bring their own opinions and their own views, and you have to be a very good negotiator. So I think these 4 set of factors, I think they're all interconnected, but I think it's a very good system approach to global leadership.
And I really appreciate that, because it's you have to sustain your leadership, and as we can see here, there's results. Lead and engage. You can't concentrate totally on results and productivity. No more can you concentrate fully on leading a group, or nor can you concentrate fully on engaging by being a consultant or educating. It's kind of understanding how to combine these things, and I suppose, Joaquin, everyone has to find their own balance that suits their own personalities, and how do we factor this in to different personas that we have as leaders?
Well, when you're looking at this process that you're showing up right now, it's important to come up with the right people. You have to, first of all, come up with the right people in the organization that value the vision that you're putting out, that you're projecting. That everything cannot be based on results. Everything can't be based on what is it that your expectations are for the organization, but you also have to come up with the right processes and link these people together and ensure that they're in alignment with the strategy that you're proposing. You're also, from the leading perspective, what level of leadership do you need to develop? Well, like we spoke before, it's a type of leadership that needs to be very adaptable and very flexible to what is happening in the environment, what is happening, and how do we get people to recognize and what is it that is emerging that you can provide your own the right strategic process to make this work. And then from that point, you need to ensure you have cohesiveness between the individual and how that individual works within the group and within the organization. So all that is very, very interrelated to each other. But the right balance, it starts with the right leadership. I mean, if the leadership and the person that's behind leading the vision is not really focusing in on the overall picture, you're really going to fall short and not really be as effective as you need to.
So we figured out that we need to drive results. We know that we have to lead a group, and we have to engage with that group in order to get their buy-in. Now, one thing that we concentrate on, on some of our management courses, we look at, service dominant logic. We look at value, and how, managers, leaders, marketers can be value driven. How do you believe a global leader can be value driven, and what does that even mean?
Well, what that means, leaders can be value driven and can lead from a values approach by first establishing an effective leadership framework that describes organizational values and core ethics values that promote a shared process across the entire organization. These values should be directly influence the business itself. Should also be influenced by the culture that you're providing and the ethical domain that exists with the organization. A value-driven approach should also identify the strengths and challenges of the organization and provide a leadership style that will help individuals grow and be more active participants in change initiatives, to be active contributors in the organization. And by that I mean is that you have to include everyone in the change process. I mean, I've seen very, very some leaders out there, and I have critiqued them many, many times, where they'll come up with a change process, a new reorganization, but do not really get the people involved in that change process. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones who really know the job very, very well. They should be included to help you come up with new ideas and new work practices to make this change come about much, much easier. So any value-driven approach should also create a strategic vision for the organization and establish a type of culture that permeates across all levels of the organization. And then lastly, any value-driven approach must establish participative structure. And what I mean is getting people involved, getting people across all levels of the organization help you come up with new solutions to the problems and new ways to do business more smarter and more efficiently. So it's really getting everyone involved in the value process, but understanding that you have to work within your core ethics and the shared process of the entire organization.
I mean, it's a nice progression that we have now, getting to this point in the masterclass. We're looking at identifying the strengths and challenges and creating a strategic vision, and now we're moving into the area of, well, how do I have to behave to do that? What kind of personality do I have to project? How do I then empathize with my team? How do I do all of that? And so we come across inevitably, like we always do in management, come across emotional intelligence in the context of global leadership. So I've used too many acronyms here. I do apologize. Now, can you outline the principles of emotional intelligence, Joaquin, especially maybe Goldman and some of the principles outlined there, and how they can be used by leaders today to be more effective?
Sure. Well, there are 4 domains or pillars that I call it of emotional intelligence that should also be part of global leadership. These competencies pertain to self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Let me take them one at a time. And when we look at self-awareness dimension, global leaders should be more attuned to their own inner signals and recognize how their feelings affect them and affect their performance. You have to really know yourself. You have to know the level of competency that you have to be able to work well within this environment. So global leaders need to recognize their strengths, their limitations, and what areas they need to develop further. And that's one of the things that sometimes leaders some leaders lack is that their ability to they think that they're more smarter than they think, and they forget about developing their weaknesses. I mean, we all have weaknesses. I mean, there isn't one person that will lead an organization and will not have any weaknesses. We all have some limitations, but we need to focus in on those and exhibit some sense of humor about that, and try to develop that further, and try to develop and get them to become your strength. So global leaders should show some self-confidence and welcome difficult welcome difficult foreign assignments when they're asked to, because they will be asked to from time to time to do that. And then when you look at global leaders, they should also develop their own self-management competencies. And by this I mean their ability to have an emotional self-control in the way they approach global problems and channel them in the useful ways. An effective global leader will have self-control, can stay calm, be clear-headed during times of stress and during many global challenges. I've seen many leaders sometimes that a threat or an impending issue can get them out of control. I mean, and that's a weaknesses. I mean, in the time of deep issues that their challenges are happening to the organization, a leader has to take charge and show to other individuals that he or she can lead, and he or she can make decisions, and the right decisions, yes, to make the organization understand what is happening. And global leaders should also display some self of social awareness and show a high level of empathy. They should be able to be attuned to a wide range of emotional signals, where they're good listeners and grasp other person's perspective, and also have an empathy to also show how them to get along with other cultures. So we have to learn from other people. You know, one of the things that I have learned as a leader in organization, and when you start looking at different culture, we can learn so much about culture. I mean, I have had individuals that have worked for me from India, from China, you know, and you can learn so much from these people because they have some different upbringing, and they can really show you a different way of doing things. So you have to sit down sometimes and really be a good listener. And good social awareness is critical today if you're going to be an effective leader. And then finally, global leaders should be able to have a very good practicing relationship management. They can do this by inspiring followers with a dynamic vision, with a sense of common purpose beyond the day-to-day tasks. They're also very good at building a network of support and are very persuasive and engaging when involved with their followers. So in other words, get people to work. I mean, get people to really share their ideas. Get people to really come up with a collaborative approach to solving problems and coming up with solutions. These same leaders can also recognize the need for change and challenging status quo, and developing others to lead those change initiatives. And like I said before, we need to lead others to lead themselves. I mean, that's really one of my important mottos is that we need, as a leader, you need to develop other people within your command to help and become future leaders in the organization. And then finally, relationship management. I mean, as far as relationship management is, that you have to be able to, deal with conflict, and be able to develop effective teamwork and collaborative practices that can also help you confront these challenges. So all these factors, all these areas of emotional intelligence are critical today, and as a global leader, you really have to first get to know yourself, and then get to know your people that are working with you, but then develop a sense of relationship with them, so that can help you become a better leader.
I mean, are there techniques, or is there a way to start in terms of working on yourself to develop these skills? I was talking to a vice president of a digital marketing agency last week, and he said, we all need to be great storytellers, but you can't be a great storyteller until you're a great listener. Does the same apply here, that you can't be emotionally intelligent unless you start with listening? And is that the first step to being a bit more having a bit more EQ, as we say?
I think the first step is understanding yourself. As a leader, I think we need to understand who we are as a person,
Hmm.
who we really portray, what is our really our important strength that we have, um, and then what is it that we need to develop? And what I usually do sometimes, and I get a lot of feedback from employees. When we do end of the year evaluations, one of
Hmm.
my important things when I evaluate employees, I ask for their own feedback on me. I want to understand what do they see in me as a leader, perhaps that I can do better.
Nice.
And that really helps me. That really helps me understand what are some weaknesses or some limitations that I have where I can be a better effective leader. But I think it starts from you knowing yourself, who you are, and then be helping to develop your own competencies, and then creating a culture and an environment where you can be you feel that you have social competence, where people can come to you for advice, and you can go to other people for advice,
Mm.
and you feel that you're engaging and you're developing a collaborative environment. Um, and so it's not easy to create this type of process, but it's much easier if you have the right leadership style, and if you have a leadership style that really is open to relationship management and to understanding the importance of being with other people and helping getting other people involved in your decision-making process. I think it's something that uh, you need to work at as a global leader to create this level of culture. But I think it really starts from the individual. You really have to know yourself, I think, before you can start dictating or leading others. If you have very little understanding of yourself, I don't see how you can be an effective leader today.
Yes, and for any of you who want to explore that more, Daniel Goleman, the book here, is an authority on emotional intelligence. And this book is, it's quite an influencer for people on management courses and in leadership positions. So go check it out. Moving on to whether we can now identify then, Joaquin, an example of a business leader who actually fits the profile of a global leader. What two examples have you given us today, Joaquin?
Well, there are many examples that we can come up with of individuals who are taking steps to really show that they're able to work in a global environment. One is Starbucks Howard Schultz, who brought the means of delivering high quality coffee to many consumers, to many communities in countries around the world. I mean, I've been to London, I've been China, I've been to different parts of the world, and I can always go to Starbucks and and be able to get a good cup of coffee if
Sure.
that's what I want to pay for. But my wife enjoys Starbucks, and the model and the brand what they have developed, it has sold all over the world, and that's because of the type of vision that he had, and he's able to adapt to the different cultures, and I think it's an excellent model. I think it's an excellent model we can learn from to understand how Starbucks can be so effective in different parts of the world. And the other one is Jeff Bezos from Amazon, a pioneer of the internet world. He really created a means for people to be able to shop and do anything, you know, basically acquire what they need throughout the entire world through using the internet. I mean, um, when these initiatives first came out, I didn't realize how big this would get, but now you can do business and acquire what you're looking for any part of the world just because you have the means to go into Amazon and search for what you're looking for. So I can think of others. Walmart's did an excellent job. Uh, uh, you know, uh, Going out and creating a retail store, different parts of the world. I think he did it in China, did it in different places. So there's a lot of different global leaders who have taken those steps, and they were able to take the risk, and they were able to understand the environment very, very well, to be able to analyze that you just because you have a model here in one country doesn't mean you cannot adapt that and make it more easier, or make perhaps more effective in other places in the world. So these two individuals really inspired change and created change within not just their own organization, but throughout the world.
Well, I mean, these two guys have achieved so much, and I think of, in China, Jack Ma and Alibaba, and real pioneers who've really opened the world up to thousands of people from everywhere, like you say, many consumers, many communities and countries throughout the world. Now, we've covered, emotional intelligence. We've looked at value-driven systems, ways of leadership. We inevitably move on to innovation. How does a global leader then create a culture of originality that allows them to innovate within their organizations and get the best out of people?
Excuse me. Well, a global leader should be able to create a culture that fosters innovation and creativity in the workplace. I mean, that's really that should be something that should come traditionally to most leaders. I mean, leaders need to recognize that they cannot be stagnated. They have to live in a world where things are going to change, and you need to foster innovation and creativity. They must be able to do this by giving employees opportunities to be creative in the workplace and generate ideas. I mean, one of the things I do, which is with my employees, is basically I ask them every month when we have meetings, and what is it that you're doing that inspires people, that gets them to start getting their creative mind thinking. What opportunities are you creating to allow people to come up with new ideas, new ways of doing business, new best practices? What can we learn from industry that they're doing that perhaps we can adapt in our own environment? So leaders should be able to solicit ideas from individuals and not just groups. You need to be able to sit down with them and ask them directly. What is it that how can we improve your own process? How can we improve what you're doing today and make it better? Get them to think. Get them to really get out of the box and think of ways of innovating. Some members even will dominate a certain conversation. We need to basically get them to really think about other people and other views and what other people's ideas may have. So employees should be given opportunities to write down their own ideas and be innovative and putting the right people in the right place. I believe that how we hired, and if we're not asking these individuals what is it we can do and what is it that they can do to improve the workplace, I think we're missing a key ingredient here. I think that we need to really hire creativity in the workplace. Some people put a lot of emphasis on that, others don't. But I think if you're taking a chance on an individual, you want that individual to really be able to bring something more to the table other than just a set of interview questions you may just asked. So get them to think how you're going to be able to empower employees to be able to be creative in the workplace.
Well, I think it's an interesting point that you make, and everyone should really listen up there, because going into a big meeting and expecting that to be a great source of generating ideas is not necessarily the case, and you might hear the same people with the same ideas just because of different personality types. And if you have some people a bit more introvert even, and need to open up, then yes, you need to understand the individuals that you have and to be able to take them aside in a comfortable space so that they can give you their ideas and you can work on that with them. So I think that's a really lovely tip there. There's loads of hidden pockets and ideas and sources for innovation that we might not be realizing. We just need to foster that. Now the big punchline for our event today is, obviously, if you want to become an expert in global leadership, if you want to learn these skills, then you're going to have to get your nose to the grindstone. You have to start doing some research, reading, handing in some assignments, and there you are, you're doing a master's degree. So what skills and theories taught or learned on our fantastic programs can help establish me as a more effective global leader, Joaquin?
Well, I think our programs at Roehampton University really helps many students develop their skills and competencies that they will need to lead their own organizations today. I think, and through many of the modules that I teach, change management skills, problem-solving skills, decision-making skills, and global thinking skills. That's just some of the few that just come to mind. But really, problem-solving skills, because we have a lot of students that really have been involved and been part of leading their own organization, leading their own businesses. God, we got so much to learn from those. I mean, from those ideas. So in our modules, we have a lot of projects that we really put out to help bring about some of these insights, some of these ideas. And problem-solving skills is something that really helps students really comprehend some of our models. And then throughout some of the models, you're going to have a lot of different leadership theories and models, transformational leadership, transactional leadership, that really are important ingredients to become effective leaders today in an organization. And how do we create meaningful collaborative engagements in the workforce? All these things are really taught in many of our modules. It really helps students really conceptualize what they already have, what skills they already have, and how to complement those skills, perhaps with what they can learn from the classroom, from others in the classroom that bring about new ideas and new insights. Perhaps something that works in one industry may work in another industry, but just by grasping and collaborating, engaging in meaningful collaborative discussions. And that's what we do in our classrooms, really get students to think outside the box and think how we can improve different processes. So, but yeah, I think that the biggest ones that I think from a lot of our modules that many students really get to grasp and tie directly to the importance of global leadership is change management skills, understanding the importance of problem-solving skills and emotional intelligence competencies. How do we develop some of those? So it's important that students really grasp these so we can apply some of them in our best practices. And then basically students want to take many foundational courses designed to help them understand global businesses and operate and apply critical thinking and analytical skills, which are important to the business environment. So I think it's from the time I've been teaching now since 2012 at Roehampton University, and I've really gotten a lot of great feedback from many of our students that really come to my classroom, and when they leave, they really say, you know, they really got something out of the course because it really taught them how to improve their own businesses, how to improve their own organization, how to make change more efficiently, and these models and theories that we introduce to them on change management and leadership really inspire them, really get them to think, hey, maybe I can perhaps adapt this in my own business. So I think there's a lot to learn from, and it's an evolving master's program, and I think that it'd be a great place to start.
Well, I absolutely, obviously, and wholeheartedly agree, but we will allow our audience as well to ask some questions. So, Joaquin, as you've been presenting, we've had a flurry of questions coming in from our guests, and I haven't seen a lot of them already, and I've only looked through a few of them. So I'm going to pick some of them out, Joaquin, and see if you can tackle them. So let's have a look. Oh, nice one. Hi, Joaquin. This is Hilaria, one of your students from Mozambique. So you have your students watching today.
Oh, great.
Lovely. Hello. What I understood from my studies is that the best leadership model is really a mix between all known types of leadership. Would you agree with that?
No, I definitely agree. I think that there isn't one leadership style or leadership model that you can apply across the board throughout every organization and every industry. I mean, you have to recognize the environment that you're working with. You have to recognize the change that perhaps are happening or may happen within a year or two, and adapt the right leadership framework that's going to work for you in your organization. I mean, you have to be able to be very sensitive to the understanding that you may have to change your own ways of leading and leadership model just because the environment dictates it, and the type of culture that you're bringing, and the type of challenges that you may face. So yes, I do agree wholeheartedly that we just cannot base everything on one particular leadership model.
Very, very right. Now, we've had some questions come in naturally today, you know, with the elephant in the room as it is, with the changing US political system as it's been. Now, our policy generally is not to get to wade into politics. It's a very difficult and messy area. However, we do like to wade into globalization and changes, whether they're positive or negative. Things aren't black and white. What is good for someone in a trade agreement is bad for someone else. What's good in an emerging market might be bad in a developed market, and vice versa. There are no right answers. So I'm going to take some of these questions, but we won't be getting particular about personas, about characters, and about political leanings. But we will be looking at addressing some of your questions that look at maybe, you know, the New World Order and some of the different things that are happening now. So let's take one of those. Now, there appears to be an anti-globalization sentiment building across the world, especially in the US. Do you think that will continue? To what extent? And what is the future of free trade and globalization? So let's concentrate on that. Do you think more protectionist trade measures, Joaquin, may require global leaders to change their tactics slightly, for good or bad?
Well, I think, and there are different political views, but yes, I think trade is a concept that, and many of the different leaders have discussed, has to be a fair process, and every country dictates or has some model that they abide by of how much they want to allow, how much they want to be able to participate. I think that every country will be different. Every political or leader will take different steps to make that in the best interest of that particular country. But it's hard to judge without really understanding what country may we be working with, and how they look at it in a different perspective.
Exactly. Now, you've mentioned that global leaders often face more complex surroundings because of the given internationality. Do you think a global leader can indeed have the same detailed insight in order to decide to make decisions properly as a domestic leader does, who might have much less to consider?
Well, I think they can have the same, different, same insights in some ways, but keep in mind that a global leader deals with different challenges that focus a lot on a different global perspective, and that individual, he or she, has to be able to adapt and have to be able to come up with a certain framework that's going to work best for him or she. But I think when you're making a comparison between domestic and global leadership, there's a lot of differences, especially when one is really working outside the realm of the organization, and really looking at the environment throughout the world, and compared to a domestic leader that basically focuses in on what has happened within his organization and a national perspective.
Well, thank you very much. And we have a question from Krishna here. Firstly, thank you for these webinars. You're more than welcome. They're really helpful. From my recent experience, I can say there is great communication between the leaders that I work with. That's great. They are more approachable, and the barriers are being removed, which effectively allows us all to focus on working towards a solution. My question is, what should leaders retain as time evolves? So what is that kind of skill that you need to keep going back to, and you need to remember, that core skill that defines you as a global leader?
Well, I think that you have to learn a lot from experience. I think that you have to have a very good background and really understand what is happening within your own environment. What actually has worked well for you in the past under similar situation. perhaps what may not work so well under your current state. But I think you have to really comprehend and try to develop yourself and basically depend a lot on your own experience, and I think your own experience follows you throughout the different aspects of your own global leadership positions that you may undertake. I think if you perhaps are asked an assignment to take on a global leadership position in China, you're going to grab a lot of information, a lot of insights, and a lot of experience about those individuals and that culture. And if you get transferred perhaps in somewhere in Europe, you're going to grasp a different perspective. I think that, but you're going to take that. You're definitely going to take that what you have learned in one world context and take it with you, and perhaps share at least reflect on what has worked well, what worked well in that environment, and see how you may adapt it somewhere else.
Okay, now we have a question. You talk about a feature of global leadership being shared collaborative leadership, which I totally agree with. How can followership or staff, it's very interesting, look back to front, how can staff effectively support or ensure a weak or underprepared leader develops competencies of global leaders? So how can a team support their manager or their leader?
Well, I've been in situations where I've seen staff that really understand and have a better understanding of the direction of the organization than leaders have done. Because unfortunately I've been around defective leaders that have really not been able to do very well in this realm. So I think when a staff recognizes that hey, that there is some weaknesses or some different level of competency that perhaps a leader needs to develop, I think that he or she in the staff should sit down with the leader and really try to get them to understand their own way of thinking, their own way why certain things may work better. I mean, I've seen leaders that come in and within 6 months they'll try to reorganize, they'll try to change things without really consulting the staff, without really consulting anyone, and not really getting ideas and getting inputs. And those are radical leaders. Those are individuals that basically want to change for the sake of changing and not really get to understand people and the people that have been working there for 20 years and been doing the job and have a better understanding of what it takes to lead that organization. So I think to answer the question, I think staff members really need to be active and sometimes challenge status quo, challenge an individual perhaps that may not understand what is really happening with the organization.
Exactly. Now, in your experience, is another question, where is a difficult area to lead in the world? I mean, is there a particularly difficult country or socio-economic or political situation that makes it difficult for for a global leader to operate effectively?
Well, that's a tough question. But, I mean, really, it all depends on the environment. I mean, it all depends on the individual's knowledge, and perhaps if I was, working always in a national environment, and I've been tasked to go to perhaps in an area where, in the Far East, where I may not be comfortable at, may not be very experienced at, I would think it would be very, very challenging for me. I think that you first, before you take those kind of assignments, I think you first need to study the culture. You also need to understand the people you're going to be working with, and how to be effective in that environment, how to succeed in that environment, and really study the language, the culture, and the environment, and so you can be successful. But I think it could be a radical change if you go from one place to where you have really not very, very familiarity with.
No, I completely agree. It's got to be with your comfort zone. One country will suit one person's experience and persona different from another person. And like Joaquin said at the beginning, you can't be an effective global leader unless you kind of understand your own personality. Now we have a question here. When we talked about social awareness, you indicated a point that says picking up the mood in the room. What does that mean? So what did you mean by picking up on the mood in the room, or how do you do that?
Well, understanding that you're involved with people, perhaps in a collaborative format, that you need to understand other people's feelings and other people's views that perhaps they feel strongly about. Perhaps you may want to create a radical change that people may feel they may resist the change. They may have. So before that happens, try to understand what people's feelings are. Try to understand what people's heartaches or perhaps why they may not want to adapt your own view, your own philosophy, or your new vision to go to one direction. So I think we have to survey and really look at people and really recognize what people are feeling and what people are really think about the change initiative you're trying to propose.
Exactly. Catherine said, thank you for the tip on soliciting ideas from individuals and not always from a group. We're so collaborative as an organization and you've given me food for thought. Perhaps many of the best ideas do not get heard. Thank you. It's a great takeaway. And certainly for me actually today is that idea of always having these meetings to think of the next idea and the next vision, and actually realizing that that is only part of getting people's ideas and you need to approach them individually. Let's have a look. As an art teacher, lovely, as an art teacher, I role play as a leader for my students. One thing that has evolved over time with my style is that I encourage collaborative discussions and discuss ideas, encourage critical thinking. Studying with Roehampton has been a great influence for this evolution in me. I'm sure you see that from a lot of students, Joaquin. Throughout the course, students build up to a final research project. Can you just explain what that means and how students get to put these kind of theories into practice in a longer project?
Sure. I mean, we introduce students to real-world problems in a project. We try to really come up with a project that really has an application for them, that they can really relate to them to within their own industry or their own organization, and they really get to bring about ideas, creative ideas, how to make change, how to create a change within that process. Perhaps it could be a simple processes of improving a work practice, or it could be a very complex change that may need improvement. But students are really are asked to engage themselves and to reflect how to go about creating a positive change in a certain specific project, and apply what you have learned from your readings, a theory or a model that perhaps you feel can be applicable, that can be adaptable. And as they do this, I always ask my students, think about your own organization. Think about what is it that is working well today, or perhaps may not be working well, that you think that can be applicable, that can be applied into this project. What ideas do you think that could create a specific change? So as they go through this process of reflecting and synthesizing, they take it a step-by-step approach of identifying problems and then coming up with possible solutions and providing recommendations of how that can come to fruition toward the end. And I think it's a great way of learning, a great way of really bringing forward all their knowledge, everything they have learned in the course, but also everything they have learned from their own personal professional experience. I mean, that's really the best papers that I've read are those that can really complement the classroom work with what they have brought from their own experiences, because to me that's valuable, and I really learn a lot from all my students that way.
Thank you very much. Now, as we get close to the hour mark today, it will be impossible to take all your questions and field them to Joaquin. Otherwise, Joaquin might spend his entire day answering your questions, which would be fantastic, but unfortunately we don't have that time today. So I'm going to pick out a last couple of questions, and And thank you very much for all of your feedback. Now, many of you have been asking about the video. The video is available for all of you. In about an hour or two's time, you'll see a link sent to you. Thank you for watching the webinar. Here's a copy of the recording, and you can view that at your leisure. In terms of handouts, Joaquin has kindly contributed answers to us, and they're in a PDF article that you'll see in the handouts section on your panel. So you just click that, download the PDF, and again, you can read that at your leisure. If you do want to use that for your studies, if you're a current student, then just remember to cite and reference Joaquin. Remember to stick to the guidelines, whether that's Harvard or APA. Some thanks coming from our MPH crew that are here today. Masters of Public Health saying thank you very much for inviting us to the webinar. Doesn't matter what field you're in, project management, computing, health, leadership is all encompassing, so thank you for that. And talking about global leaders, we have people all over the world here, people from Australia, India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Zurich. I could go on, but really this is truly representative. So let's put a couple more questions to you, and then we're going to have to conclude today's sessions. So first question I'll ask from Kerry. If the values of a leader differ vastly from their subordinates, how can the leader solve this issue? And is that even the right question? How does the leader solve this issue? Joaquin.
So the values of you're saying the values of the leader different from the employees?
Yeah, so say I come into a company and I think everything should be prosumer marketing, but they think everything should be top-down prospectus-based marketing. How do I deal with that when I want to lead in my way?
Right. Well, there's you know, I face that many times because sometimes we don't get a chance to work with the right individual that perhaps sees our own views, sees our own ideas. What I have done in the past is basically sat down with the leader that I've dealt with and brought forward my own ideas and brought forward my own reflection of how the individual perhaps could improve in certain areas. And if that didn't work, then I basically tried working, went to work somewhere else. I mean, I don't really enjoy working for people that are perhaps not in line with my own values. I mean, I'm not going to do. If I'm asked to work in an ethical environment, I'm not going to do that. And so I will basically steer away. The most important thing is recognizing what is important to you as an individual, what is, and then striving forward toward acquiring that, and don't give up.
I like the way you touched upon ethics there. It's all incumbent upon us to hold our own ethical code. Many people may be working in emerging markets that might still have issues with corruption and transparency. We have to take our individual stand, as difficult as it is, to decide what line we fall in terms of our ethics, and that's something that maybe we can bring you back for in the future, Joaquin, a focus on the importance that ethics now place in leadership. The last question I'd like to ask you is from Edo Yao. Kiachi, thank you very much. And this is a very big question. There is no answer to this, but a lovely way to finish today. How are the successes of a leader acknowledged by society?
Well, that's a nice question. That is a really nice question, but I think that you need to recognize your own successes in yourself. I mean, I think society itself, by you making a difference in people's lives, you making a difference in your communities, I think society can reward you and help you become perhaps a better leader in a different environment. I mean, I'd see myself when I was trying to get my master's program, and the fact that I did, and I got my PhD, and how I got rewarded. And how I got rewarded was by I wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and I wanted to teach. And I think society allowed me and recognized the fact that I was able to be a good instructor. And today I'm teaching for a great university like Roehampton, and I think it's part because society recognizes that I achieve certain rewards, and I should be recognized for that. And so I think society does recognize, and I think what you do in life has a way of coming back to you. and hopefully making a difference.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Joaquin, for your wise words. The world will always acknowledge sincerity, effort, and quality. Thank you to all of our audience members for attending today in this masterclass, University of Roehampton Online in Global Leadership. We hope to see you all in class where you can really get your teeth into leadership and start becoming the global leader that we know that you can be. Thank you very much, Dr. Angles, for today. I look forward to seeing you shortly as we come back and we further our discussion on leadership. I also look forward to seeing our students and any prospective students back with us for our next discussion. So that's all from me. Thank you very much, and thank you from the University of Roehampton. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.